I remember that May 5th, 1995 was a major hailstorm that I worked, and we were one of the very few at that time, tracking any type of paper type maps where the hail hit and creating our own grids. When I see their faces of the moms and the kids, my job is to bring them safe into a storm and bring them back home safe. And that to me is my bottom line. That is where I am all about. That is
when you're preparing and you're actually on the ground when the storm is happening. Does HailTrace where does that fit into that and kind of help you guys be able to solve some of those problems you had?
It's important that I bring all that information in, and a big part of it is being able to have that weather data also to share with the clients so they know if they're moving logistics or they're moving a supply chain in an area, they could reroute things and actually be a lot more efficient than deal with liability issues or loss of product or whatever, maybe, or even loss of life in those type of scenarios. Yeah.
I'm excited to have on today the founder of Strategic Response Partner, Steve Slepcevic. And you are a longtime HailTrace customer. And I would just love to kind of understand what you are doing with Strategic Response Partner, SRP. Really just kind of maybe start off giving an overview of what you guys are doing and how you guys have really respond and make a difference when different hurricanes, different storms happen across the U.S.
Excellent. Well, Collin, good to be here, and thanks for having me online. Yeah, I just want to simply share that my background comes from structural engineering and design. My whole family's, well, not my whole family, but the majority of my family's in the development business. So at a very young age, I started, doing construction, pouring concrete, setting walls, framing in the summers, and really kind of learned the trades, everything from ground up to mid-rise. And then in '89, I got into the industry and worked my first hurricane, which was Hurricane Andrew. Then did a lot of work after that from the '94 earthquake. I remember that May 5th, 1995 was a major hailstorm that I worked, and we were one of the very few at that time, tracking any type of paper type maps where the hail hit and creating our own grids and even chasing hurricanes. I remember, one time we almost lost a bunch of loads, a bunch of trailers of drying equipment because, we didn't have the actual technology, the weather technology to keep you out of harm's way. And we thought, the hurricane was coming up on a certain sector, and the hurricane decided to turn in earlier while we're moving trailers and equipment. And we almost lost several loads that time. It was a very dangerous type of scenario, So, I mean, it makes a big difference of having good data, good intel, good information. And back then we didn't have it. Nowadays we do, and everything's moment to moment. But even with the best data, what many people don't realize, these hurricanes, many of them have rain-wrapped tornadoes in them. So you could be in the best possible shelter, and a massive tornado lands within that hurricane on top of your structure. And then it completely changes the dynamics of what you're dealing with,
Right. So it's important even in the heat of the storm to have data and know exactly what's happening with the storm, to not get caught off guard with the shifts that happen with it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm in Tallahassee right now. So what we do is we always deploy before a storm, and we meet with our clients. And typically the clients are hospitals, critical infrastructure, logistics centers, private airports, shipping ports if it's near a coastal area, and some municipalities that we work with. So our stuff is really what they call batten down the hatches, go through the facilities, have our structural, mechanical, or different engineers take a look at all the different components that are operating, make sure that they have additional fuel cells online that are available to them at that location, make sure they have backup generators in place. If they don't, we have them on skids ready to slide in there and power up that hospital or that logistics center, whatever it may be, that can't go down.
Right.
And so we're here ahead of the storm. I have a very highly trained team of urban search and rescues, technical rescue experts, paramedics, fire rescue guys, engineers. So it's a collaborative team that comes together to make sure that these facilities stay online.
Right.
So yeah, it makes a big difference of having that data, because I'm putting a lot of people in harm's ways. And especially when I'm leaving home and I'm packing my bags and moving all our cases through the airports and all my guys are deploying, I know the wives and the children of these men and women. And my job is, when I see their faces of the moms and the kids, My job is to bring them safe into a storm and bring them back home safe. And that to me is my bottom line. That is where I am all about. That is bring them in safe, because at the end of the day, it's not about the work that needs to be done. It's always making sure that your people are taken care of, that they're safe in that place, and that you can get them off the X and back home safe to their family when the work's all done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And important to, as you kind of look at the impact these type of storms have on people's lives. And I'm curious on what you guys are doing when you're preparing and you're actually on the ground when the storm is happening. Does HailTrace kind of, where does that fit into that, and kind of help you guys be able to solve some of those problems you had before you became a customer, and then what does kind of life look like being able to use some of the tools we have available?
Yeah, the live weather reporting is critical, right? So we're getting our data from multiple sources. It's not like one; it's always redundancy, right? And I've been watching Derek operate and been following his feeds and him, posting stuff and putting information and going live on certain scenarios. Just the intel. He's one of the most knowledgeable guys when it comes to this whole meteorology world. And so that's been critical for us. It's been very helpful for us. Mapping specific areas is critical, so I know what critical infrastructures are in that area that's going to get impacted. And sometimes when we're working for one asset owner, I may not be working for another asset owner, but being able to have that data, being able to reach out to that client or even send them an email that I was able to obtain through HailTrace it's a great tool to have, So we're already here. We're already deploying and mobilizing a ton of resources from power, fuel, mitigation. We have an extensive network of vendors from roofers, shrink wrap companies, mitigation companies, engineers, mechanical. Everyone's coming here. We have our guys that provide food, that cater for our teams. We have a whole separate security division called Saber Defense Team that provides security. As you know, EMS and law enforcement are not going to be in place for 72 hours, sometimes 96 hours after a storm, and they're not running to anybody's aid. But for these facilities, it's important that I bring all that information in. And a big part of it is being able to have that weather data also to share with the clients so they know if they're moving logistics or they're moving a supply chain in an area, they could reroute things and actually be a lot more efficient than deal with liability issues or loss of product or whatever, maybe, or even loss of life in those type of scenarios. Yeah. So it's an important, very important facet in the disaster response area. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, because we have those weather maps, so it's going to track where that storm went, where the hurricane is hitting, and then also some of the tools with like the impacted asset feature we have, like being able to even know who are being hit, and being able to like respond and notify customers, like notify people in the moment. I'd love to kind of get a feel for how it looks for you even here at, because you're down in Hurricane Helene, and what are you seeing on the ground? Is what you're doing and preparing for the storm, is that any different than past hurricanes? I'd love to get kind of to hear from what you're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, so everything in every hurricane is you're looking at what are the flood levels, what is the surge going to pull up, what is the topography of the landscape, what areas are going to flood, is the area going to be accessible, are you going to be able to move vehicles in and out of an area, where are you setting your base of operation, is it a Cat 5 structure, are we moving our vehicles into a parking garage? These things are all things that we do ahead of time. We call it our setting up our BOO, our base of operation, right? So where you're going to anchor in for the storm, right? Right now you can see that in town, they have all the evacuation buses are lining up on different streets. So they're pushing people out already. Businesses are already shutting down. They're preparing for a very wide storm. So this event is going to be a much wider type system. And if we've learned anything from past storms around this time in the season, they have the ability for rapid intensification. So I always tell people, regardless of what you think you know about hurricanes, I always wonder why people want to ride out a hurricane when they're living in their home and their house is not built for a Cat 5 structure. Resources are not going to be available You're not going to have fuel. The power, all the fuel, gas stations are going to be shut down, right? Most of the roads will be blocked by trees that come down, power lines that come down, flooding areas. You're not going to be able to go to a store and pick up food and come back. None of that stuff starts, and it makes it very uncomfortable when you're sitting in a hot box, in it just being steamed out completely, in hot weather, no food, no water, and no resources. And if something comes through your window or your roof collapses or something else, there's no medical aid that's coming to render aid to you. I mean, one of the perfect examples was during Fort Myers. We were anchored into Cape Coral. So people are like, "Oh, you guys got to anchor in on Fort Myers Beach," and I'm like, "No, there's no safe structure that really allows us to move in that area and actually be of service." So the people that we were doing work for, we anchored into Cape Coral, and it was interesting because we got a call, and the phones, because typically the phones go out by the time it gets to Cat 4, right? Phones were still working. Call goes through dispatch, comes to our team. We're down there in Cape Coral, myself included. A bunch of my paramedics are down there. And we get a call from a young father, married probably a year and a half, with a baby that was 9 months old. And he's calling, and he's like, "Hey, there's 4 feet of water in my house. I'm standing on the kitchen counter with my wife and my baby, and I need a rescue." And I'm like, "You need a rescue?" I said, "How'd you get our number?" He goes, "Well, I called the Coast Guard." I said, "What'd they tell you?" He said, "Yeah, they said they're not coming." I said, "Who'd you call next?" He goes, "I called EMS. They said they're not coming." He goes, "Who'd you call next?" He goes, "I called the Cajun Navy." They're like, and I said, "Well, what'd they say?" They said they're not coming either. And they said the only ones crazy enough are the guys at SRP. Call them. They have a whole team there. They'll probably be the only ones that'll be able to rescue. I said, "Listen, we may be a little bit extreme, but that we're not in extreme where we're going to put our own lives in danger, right? There's no way to access you, my friend, and it's already a Cat 4. And I almost wanted to say, what were you thinking when you were told to evacuate with your family? People don't understand the importance of it. The fact that you also have a lot of times there's live power, people step out of their vehicles, get electrocuted, gas lines get ruptured. So there's all types of fires sometimes that happen after these type of scenarios. People are getting injured by just shrapnel and flying debris that's coming through their windows, coming through their roofs. And these projectiles, many times people step outside thinking, "Oh, this wind is fun, it's great," until a piece of plywood takes their arm off, which happened to one of our clients. And that is not a scenario you want to be living through. So then we've had people that have had trees come down on their vehicle as they're trying to leave the premises because things are becoming uncomfortable. So I always say, avoid the traffic, avoid the mayhem, get your family out to a safe place. You're not gonna fight Mother Nature. You're not no hero. There's not no time for no hero shit. Handle your shit. Get out of there. Just pick up your family and move out of there. There's no business for someone. I mean, when we come into these areas, we come in with a whole separate, like a small city. We're bringing our food, our power, our fuel, and highly trained experts that know exactly what it is. And even then, we're not yahoos. We anchor into the proper building so we can easily deploy. And in many buildings, we're in the buildings to make sure that the power's there, like we did during Hurricane Florence when the actual hospital roof came off. And we had the forethought of actually putting a shrink wrap crew inside, which created a swale on the top floor, diverting water, where we pulled the toilets, diverted water into the drains, diverted water off the power. And that hurricane stalled over Wilmington for 5 days. And as a result of that, and 300 bodies in there doing mitigation, was a Bucker Brigade. I mean, literally, we were plugging holes on the ship to keep it from sinking. And this main trauma center in Wilmington, North Carolina, did 17 life-saving surgeries as a result of our team being in there and being able to keep this place dry and operational. So yeah, it's critical that you have your everything lined up and all your ducks in a row and you're completely squared away. Yeah. And every team member has to be at that level before they ever deploy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so kind of continuing that, is there been moments where you are on the ground, you and your teams are working, and there was a moment where you realized, yes, this is worth it. What we're doing, this is worth it. This impacted, someone's life, and this changed and made a difference.
Oh, huge. I mean, the amount of people that we've done life-saving scenarios, doing rescues in the middle of a storm, not by choice sometimes, just because someone's life needed to be saved as a building was collapsing, and there was a person that was trapped in it, this elderly lady. But the important thing was in those type of moments, we relied on the weather data, right? The weather data that we're getting from HailTrace as to here's what you're dealing with. This is an area you want to anchor in. Here's an area you don't want to be in, right? Here's where you're setting your base of operation. And sometimes we've shifted literally last minute. Like the winds are starting to kick up. It's 75, 80 mile an hour winds. And you're like, hey guys, we're moving from this location. We're moving to that location. Wheels up, grab your gear, because everything's in our Pelican cases. We don't ever unpack in these type of scenarios. Everything you're operating from is right there. So you could throw it in, you could be out in a split second. I mean, we've been chasing for tornadoes for over 16 years. And so we know we operate the same way. Like you got to be able to go just move on a dime, And so weather, people just don't understand that is your tool. That'll save your life. And that'll also keep you out of water and getting flooded out and dealing with stuff you don't need to be dealing with in these type of scenarios.
And what you guys are doing is not just during the storm, it's also recovering afterward, right? And I get curious on maybe with some of the problems, some of the challenges you guys have faced, and maybe how HailTrace has kind of been part of that in helping communities recover and kind of rebuild after a hurricane.
Yeah. So one of the things many people don't realize is that when these hurricanes come and people start evacuating, law enforcement and EMS services stand down when the winds hit 45 miles an hour or greater. And the riffraff comes out. These are the hurricane heist type, the bad element starts to surface and starts going out and looting things. That's why it's always been a critical part that we have a security team that travels with us and also is there for our clients on our clients' assets, so they're not the ones getting hit. But as soon as that hurricane passes, everything's being put in place to start to dry out, to actually get that business back up and operational as quickly as possible. And that part comes for us, it's just another day in the office, right? Look at the damage, assess it, detail it out, work with the adjusters, look at the comprehensive scope of what's in the claim, the policy, how this is going to be built back, and lean on the insurance experts that are advocating for that property owner to make sure that they're getting made whole, alongside our contractors that are in there to rebuild the place, put it back, and restore this facility. And one of the things that comes up from time to time is what was the prior historical weather data that was at this asset? Was there a hailstorm there that impacted this roof that might diminish the value of it? Was there a prior wind event that this roof failed as a result of a prior wind event? So those type of data can be used one of two ways. If you don't have the information, an insurance company or insurance company consultant can use that against you, right? But those tools, many times, are the tools that we rely on with our engineers, our roofing forensic experts, to prove a case for the adjusters that are battling or the attorney that the owner's hired to be able to actually factually present what was the information, what was the status of that roof or that building facade or the component, what is the historical weather data that might have impacted or not impacted it, and then move forward accordingly. But facts are facts. Facts always rule. That's what drives these cases. And it's a huge difference for property or not having proper weather data that says, oh, well, the winds were only 80 mile an hour. No, it was 95 with 125, 130 mile an hour gusts. And this area specifically had a rain wrap tornado that showed on the weather maps from HailTrace that there was a tornado that ripped through this specific area. This was what the actual wind speed was, site specific. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, the roof didn't fail as a result of the installation. The roof failed because it was 130 mile an hour gust that ripped this roof apart. So that data can make the difference whether you're getting paid for that $5 million hospital roof or whether they're denying it.
Right.
So yeah, those things are critical. It's a huge financial aspect of it. And for me, anybody that has commercial property, multifamily property, any type of large property should actually sign up for your program and be a part of it. It'd be very beneficial for them, especially if they're dealing with an event or just simply to track it, just to be that much more advised as to tracking the storm and assisting them in that insurance recovery process. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do at HailTrace is showing what happened on the ground, whether the storm happened or didn't. That data is valuable for everyone in the restoration industry, from the roofers to insurance carriers to engineers. Everyone is trying to understand what's the truth behind the storm hitting that property. Well, thank you, Steve, for joining today, and Steve from SRP. Steve, is there a place people should go to if they need your services, or if they're looking to reach out to you?
Absolutely. So they go to srp24.com, or if they want to see some of the past projects that we've done, they can go to YouTube and search Strategic Response Partners. But yeah, so that's the disaster management part of it. If it's security services, they go to SabreTeam, SABRE team.com, and they can see a lot of the stuff that we do, everything from executive protection, border ops, or large scale event security. That's typically those high mission critical type events. So yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, Collin. And thank Derek for just doing an incredible job in providing excellent weather data out there, and just constantly improving his software and his technology. It really helps.
I'll make sure to let him know.
Yeah, it really helps us first responders out there in a big way. So thank him again.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. Bye for now.